Welcome to PL Together Lounge Talks. I'm Adam Geller, founder and CEO of Edthena, the video coaching platform. Today, we're talking with Jim Knight. He's a research associate at the University of Kansas and also the author of multiple books about instructional coaching. Jim, thanks so much for joining us to be part of PL Together.
My pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start out with some good news. There's a lot going on in the world. What is a kind of a story of an educator or a coach that you've interacted with recently that's really giving you energy as we, kind of prepare for the next phase of teaching during coronavirus?
Well, a couple things. One is sometime in, I think it was like April 6th, we had a chat group on Twitter talking about coaching. And I said, has anybody created an instructional playbook for distance learning? And a whole bunch of people said, no, but we'd like to do it. And so a few people, Courtney Teague, Kathy Perrett, Joy Lunsford came together and they organized this group, and about 70 people came together. And every week they got together at 7:30 on Thursdays, and they were supposed to work from 7:30 to 8:30, but many of them started smaller groups, and they did it all for free just so teachers would have access and coaches would have access to distance learning tools. And they created this distance learning playbook, which you can print it, you can copy it, you can share it, it's free. But the thing that struck me was, here are all these people who have a lot going on in their lives, 70 or more, and yet they're willing to come together for nothing other than to make a difference. And it just struck me that that's what teachers are all about. Teachers are all about, I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want to waste my time on something, but if there's something productive I can do, if I can move the ball forward for kids a little bit, I'm all in. So those people continue to energize and inspire me. And the other thing I would just say is I was really impressed by the Indiana State Department of Education, who said that their teacher of the year was every teacher in Indiana in the state. And I think that's a good way to think, that teachers have done amazing work, coaches have done amazing work in this incredibly complex time, but they're like, okay, bring it on, we'll solve it. And so I'm inspired by teachers across the world and inspired by the people who came together to create that playbook.
Well, we were going to talk about instructional playbooks later, but maybe we should talk about those first. For those that haven't read The Impact Cycle or seen the instructional playbook book, can you give us just kind of the high level, what is an instructional playbook so people know what you're talking about?
Well, I was on a plane flying somewhere back when we used to do that, Adam. And I sat beside this person and we started talking. She worked at a major computer company and computer software company. And she said, well, what I do is I help people understand how to do the things that are related to the software on site. I train them to be trainers of trainers. I said, well, how do you do that? And she said, we create playbooks, and we give people playbooks, and those playbooks tell people what to do. And so that idea of a playbook kind of started that day with me. And then in the Impact Cycle, and now we have a book called The Instructional Playbook, the idea is really simple, that you identify your go-to highest impact teaching practices that as a coach you're going to be sharing with teachers to help them hit their goals. Then you create a one-page document that summarizes what the research says, why this is important. And then you create checklists, not so you can follow up and make sure the teacher does it the right way, because the teacher's going to do it the way they want to do it, but the checklists are there so you can be precise, so you can be really clear in your explanations, and also that you can have a depth of knowledge. So the playbook kind of accomplishes two goals, at least. One of them is it's a communication tool. Once you've got these one-pagers and checklists created, you can communicate those things. But the second thing is it compels you to have depth of knowledge. So I talk to a lot of instructional coaches, and often they can't really say what are the teaching strategies they share, even though their job is to help people learn teaching strategies to hit goals. It's not their fault. It's a systemic issue. And I'm the same way. If you asked me when we were starting, and then secondly, even if they know what their strategies are, their explanations aren't that clear. And so the playbook helps them have the depth of knowledge they need to be clear, and gives them tools to increase their clarity so that when teachers implement practices, they can do them well. So that's an instructional playbook.
It's funny, your kind of description of the person in the software industry reminded me. I had a manager once who said, we had to kind of create basically he called it the pre-flight checklist. But he's like, look, like pilots do this. Of course, they know how to fly, but it ensures that all the right things are in order. It helps them do their job. So, your story there really reminded me of the value that it's not to check up on someone, it's to help them be successful in executing the idea.
Mhm.
So you kind of already mentioned that there's a new playbook out that's been created. I mean, I guess if I'm someone listening to this and I had a playbook last year, should I be thinking, well, throw that one in the trash, or is it more an adapting thing? I mean, how should I be thinking about the kind of the work to create the playbook for right now?
Well, I would say the trouble with right now is you need to be ready for everything, and you're going to need to do. Sometimes you're going to be a trainer, sometimes you're going to be a mentor, sometimes you're going to be a coach, and so I think you're going to be a really you're going to learn an enormous amount in the next 6 months. And so I don't know if I would throw it out. I think there are a lot of things that are a part of an instructional playbook, if you created one last year, that you could still do this year, particularly around planning and maybe when you have synchronous learning going on. But if you say the rule is 25% FaceTime with students, either synchronously or asynchronously, and 75% time on their own to do their own thing during the school day, then you're going to need other tools to help with that. And we're working on that. We're creating this thing called High Rise, which is high impact remote instructional strategies, which is a thing we're going to offer for teachers and coaches. And there are a lot of resources out there. The distance learning playbook I mentioned, the one that we created is free. You just have to, it's on Google and you can dig around and find it. So I guess the answer to your question is yes and no. There are probably things in there that are really helpful. And we use a framework called the Big Four: planning, assessment, formative assessment, instructional practices, and then community building. Those things, that structure probably remains the same, and some of the things that are in there will remain the same, but other things will probably have to change.
Right. I think I hear you saying like the types of outcomes and the types of things you were hoping to be true in classrooms that were important before, those things are probably still important now. Just how you might achieve them is going to look a little bit differently, or the particular strategy you might choose to kind of find that end goal with students might look different.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a lot more project-based kind of outcomes, even if it's a day-to-day, and you're going to say, here's the thing, read this, get this back to me. You're probably going to have the opportunity for more one-to-one interactions with students because you have more time. You have to have a lot of time for planning, but you're probably going to have to deliver content in different ways, maybe setting up a YouTube channel. And then things like achievement and engagement are going to be different. I don't want to just assume it's all going to match. Maybe engagement initially is students are just we would ordinarily see engagement as something we measure in the classroom. Well, there isn't a classroom, and maybe the kids aren't signing in, but like one person I talked to said they did an analysis and they said the high school students, this won't be a shock, but they did most of their work between 5 p.m. and midnight. So, that they're not maybe showing up for the class, but they're watching the class later. They're doing it on their own time. If they get the work done, it's not so much about them being there, it's about the learning. So I do think there's similar outcomes, but it'll look different in this context too.
Can you give us, something from that new playbook that stuck out to you as like, oh, yeah, that's really interesting, as a little bit of a teaser to encourage folks to go check it out, and we'll tell them in a minute where to find it exactly.
Yeah, well, I have to figure that out too. It's just what we did is we brought together all these people, and they listed off about 100 different kinds of technology tools you could use to do distance learning. And then we narrowed it down to 20, and 10 of them are Google related tools, and 10 of them are other technology tools that are, for the most part, free. And then they created the one pagers and the checklist for each of those devices. So let's say you wanted to use Padlet to give the kids the chance to respond in a way you could use for formative assessment or just to build community. Well, you can find a one-pager for Padlet. You can find checklists on how to do it, and you just go there and explain. So, people are going to be on a really steep curve for learning, and this should make it easier for them to learn the content.
Got it. Well, let's let everybody know your website so that they know where to find this resource, as well as I know you guys have a ton of other resources.
Right.
So that website's instructionalcoaching.com, and then folks would go to the resources tab at the top, right?
So the easiest thing to do is probably just go to instructionalcoaching.com, poke around a little bit. There's some tools right on the homepage, and then there's a resources section where you can download things, and go to the blog too. There's a lot of stuff on the blog, and then we've archived a bunch of interviews with experts that might be helpful as well.
Great. Well, Jim, we're going to take a break. For those that are listening or watching this video somewhere out there on the internet, you can watch the rest of this conversation as well as others at pltogether.org. Jim, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be right back.
My pleasure.